and welcome to The Guitar Effect. My name's Rob. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at my new pedal board for 2022. But before we do, I'll ask you to please like and subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you can be kept up to date every time I put out a new video. So, pedal board for 2022. My main pedal board that I use for my originals band, I use in our rehearsal room, which is in a different part of the country to where I live here. And I brought it home to add some new pedals to it and just generally reorganize a little bit because my band called Kampala, which has been together for 3 years and hasn't managed to put out any music in that time because of the pandemic and stuff like that, and trying to find a singer, which was completely fruitless, has just finished recording our first 2 singles. And this is the board that I use for recording all that material, for writing it and rehearsing it out in our studio, and it's a really, really great piece of kit. And I've just changed some stuff up in it based on pedals I've bought here and reviewed on the channel that I think suit the need of what I'm doing a bit better. We play alternative rock, by the way. It's a 3-piece. And so I think it really shows the benefit of using a loop switcher and pedals as opposed to like a Helix or something like that, combined with amplifiers in the room. So first of all, let me show you a picture of the pedal board. So here it is. So as you can see, it's an ES8 switcher with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pedals in it. And the reason for that is because I like pedals and I like amplifiers, and I like to have 2 amplifiers, one running a Fenderish clean sound and all my wet effects into it, and then the other running a Vox slightly broken up sound, and then I put just gain pedals into the front of that. So as you can see, there's the ES8, there's a Digitech Mosaic, which is a 12-string simulator. There is a Moore Spark compressor, which is that tiny little green pedal. There's a Screddy Rover Fuzz, which is a Screddy tone bender tone. There we go. There is a full tone GT500 for my main distortion sound. There's a TC Flashback 2X4 for my delay. There is the V Uno from OPFX for my synth sound. And then there is a Mosky clone, and there is a TC Hall of Fame reverb, and then an M5 by line 6 with a tuner on the end. So yeah, that's my pedal board, and that's what I use for writing and recording all the band's tunes. If we were doing like a headline show or something like that, I'd take it out with the 2 amps and set it up. But it's very, very big. I don't use it for kind of multi-band nights. I have another smaller board for that I use with house amps. But this is for, you know, defining the sound of my band and being able to use it in the way I want to. I wanted to just talk really quickly about why I choose to do this rather than a Helix or a Headrush or something like that, because we do use it to record live in the room, and what I do is my 2 amps are line 6 DT25s, and I take XLRs out of them directly into the PA, and then we can record silently on in-ears. If we want to record like, you know, a YouTube video or something like that, if we're doing a proper recording for a single or something like that, I mic the amps. But I could, for all intents and purposes, use a Helix and some F4 cabs. I just don't want to operate like that. And the reason is, I made a video on this before when I tried the Helix recently. I like to have one of everything. Okay, so like 1 distortion pedal, 1 delay pedal. Well, in my case, 3 delay pedals, because it's the X4 is like 6 presets. What I don't like to have is to have presets with individual things that can be tweaked on an individual basis within them. It's very hard to explain, but this way of doing things, so using pedals on a switcher to make presets for different parts of songs, as opposed to using a all in one unit with the amp and the effects and everything that are individual to each preset. I prefer to use stomp boxes with a loop switcher and amplifiers. It's much easier explained in the video where I tried the Helix LT, which I'll put a link up to here. Doesn't work for me. So that's basically my pedal board. I think the main thing is to show how it sounds and how I use it and how everything works. So let's get into the sound demo now. Okay, so how I'm going to go about this is I'm going to just go through the signal chain on the board first, like as in show you the order that the pedals are in the switcher, and then show you what each one of them does. And then after I've done that, I'll go through maybe 2 or 3 songs and show you the presets in the songs and how the switcher helps me manipulate the sound in the way I want to be able to, and why I go with this setup as opposed to a Helix or anything like that. So, for the purposes of today's demonstration, I'm playing my Orville Les Paul. It's a 1997, made in Japan, licensed by Gibson. It's an amazing guitar. I will say though, it's not the easiest guitar in the world to keep perfectly in tune. So if I have to break every so often to just tweak the tuning, I apologize for that. And what I'm doing is this pedal board, as you can see on the pedal cam, there's a black and white lead, and they come out. The black lead goes into the Koch Studio Tone 20, which is the wet amp, right? And I'll explain what that means in a minute. Head, which is going emulated out direct into my interface, and then the white is the dry output, and that goes into the Hotone Nano Legacy British Invasion, which is a little mini head that mimics the Vox AC30. When I'm in the studio, I use 2 DT25s by Line 6, which are modelling tube amps. One set to an AC30 and one set to a twin. So they're not exactly the same sounds, but it's pretty close. Okay, so here you can see the switcher. All the pedals are plugged into the switcher, and I'll go through the order that they're plugged in and just turn them on one by one just to show you, okay? So in loop 1, we have my octave effect, because I always put my pitch effects first. And it is a Digitech Mosaic 12-string emulator, and off is a guitar signal. Okay, and on it's into this. Okay, so that's the 12-string emulator. It does a great job of that. Second, I have the green pedal here, the Moore Spark Compressor. And so again, no compression. Exact same level. It just sort of ties everything together. So without the compressor, the dynamics are pretty... With the compressor, it just evens things out ever so slightly, and I think it does a really good job of that, and it's small, it's compact. In loop 3, it's noisy. We have the Screddy Rover Fuzz, which is a tone bender clone, and it sounds like this. So off. So you can see I have that set to that thing where it's like almost caving in itself, because I only really ever use it for single note parts, such as... So that's my fuzz, and you know, I play around with it a little bit. It's my newest, actually my second newest pedal on the board. I'm still kind of learning how to make it work with the other pedals in the way that I want to and stuff. So that's the fuzz. In number 4, we have my main distortion pedal, which is this Full-Tone GT500 on the board, right? So this has 2 sounds, so it's going to switch to the lighter sound. Okay, so clean, and first stage of distortion. So that's just like the booster / overdrive section. You can switch that off and switch on the distortion section. Great heavy overdrive sound. It's worth noting that I run this pedal on this board at 18 volts, which gives a lot more headroom, which doesn't make that much difference when you're running into the amps that are DI'd into the interface and stuff. But when you're in the room with the amps loud, you get really, really much better note definition. So that's the distortion sound. Works great for riffs. Or I can combine the two of them for the heaviest distortion sound. And obviously I can tweak that EQ. Actually, I'll leave the distortion on. I can tweak that EQ to, you know, suit the amps when I get into the room, which is a great thing about it. Once I make that one adjustment, it's done across the board. So then we come into the last gain pedal, which is the boost. And this is the silver pedal back here, which is a Mosky clone. And it sounds like this. Here's it without it. With it. I mainly use that as a actual volume and mid boost, sometimes before and sometimes after pedals for certain parts of songs. Then next we come to the reverb pedal, actually, which is the Hall of Fame there in the corner. It's a big sort of almost octo-y, shimmery sounding reverb, but it's not a shimmer because this pedal isn't capable of it. Here it is without it. So you can see it's a big modulator. So that's a reverb, and then the number 7 is the M5, and the reason that 7 is the M5 is because it's at this point in loop 7 that way it goes into the M5 as mono and comes out in stereo. And funnily enough, I have an octave reverb loaded in this particular instance, so you can hear that there. You'll see as the demo goes on that I use the M5 for a different effect in nearly every song. It's like the Swiss Army knife of the board. And then last but not least is the delay, right, which is the Flashback 2X4, and it is set up to stereo in from the M5 and then stereo out to the two outputs, effectively, is how the whole thing's routed in the board. Right now it's set to a quarter note digital delay with modulation. I can also go analog with mod. And then I have tape on this preset. Okay, so all those effects I've just shown you are going from 1 to 8, right? So you have octave, compressor, fuzz, distortion, boost, reverb, line 6 M5, and the delay. Okay, so they take up 8 loops. There's actually a 9th loop on the Boss ES8, which doesn't have a switch assigned to it. It's called a volume loop, and it's a loop that you can move anywhere around the board. So what I've done with that is I've put that into what I call an audition loop, right? So underneath this white OP effects pedal here at the back is my junction bay, right? So the left and right output, so you can see the black and white leads, as I mentioned earlier, coming out there. There's 4 outputs coming out of the back, right? So there's left and right output from the ES8. So after all the pedals, just the left and right output that's going to the 2 amps. And then the volume loop I have routed to 2 other outputs. So that means that any pedal I want to put on, it's not routed into the board. And at the moment it's a V-Uno. I can audition it in this rig. Now, I really like the V-Uno, which I've done a video on and you can see here. I like it in this situation at the moment. It suits what I'm doing. It's basically a digital multi-effects pedal that you can load 1 to 2 effects on at a time. And right now I'm using it as a synth. Now, as there's no switch assigned to it, in order to turn it on, you have to turn it on, within the menu of the ES8. So what I'm going to do now is just turn on that effect and show you. So let me just go back to turn off everything else. Okay, so if I go across to this first thing here and turn it on, you'll hear the volume loop. And it's a guitar synth. And it sounds like this. And what's cool about that is I can combine that with other effects. So if I put on the distortion, for example, I get distortion and synth. Yeah, so I'll turn it off. So that's the 8 loops. I combine those pedals then in various different ways to make presets for the band's songs. So as in I have one preset per part per song. I'm going to show you the functionality of how the ES8 allows me to do that in a sec. But before I do, there are a couple of global things I have set up when I'm in preset mode that are really, really handy. I just want to show you those things now. So if I go into preset mode here, I'm on a preset called Lonely Lives. It's one of our songs. And right now it is just a compressor. It's a compressor, a delay, and a reverb. And the delay and reverb are only on one side, on the wet amp, so the Koch side, right? And it sounds like this. So you can hear the delay and you can hear the reverb. Now, I'll go in a second, I'll get into how the presets are set up, but just to show you the few little global things that I have set up that are really handy. Okay, first of all, when I'm in preset mode, if I hit switch 8, it becomes a global top tempo for everything. So I can go from... All of the individual songs have got a preset tempo assigned to the preset, which sends tempos to both the Flashback X4 and the M5. However, if I ever want to change tempo during a song, it's great to have switch 8 set up because it'll change the tempo on the M5 and the Flashback, which is really, really handy. Secondly, if I ever want to balance the level of my wet and dry amp in the room, what I can do is I can just turn off the dry amp with switch 7 and I can only hear the wet amp. So I'll show you that now. So here is, actually I'll go to a more driven preset. Let me see. Here. So as you can see, there's a lot going on there. So if I wanted to just hear the volume of the wet amp, I can hit switch 7. So here it is. So that turns off the dry amp and allows me to hear the wet amp. And what that allows me to do is really quickly balance the volumes of the 2 amps in the room or on a recording or something like that. And it works really, really well. So that's kind of the main way that I have the switching set up on the board. Obviously the other things are you can hit mute and it mutes your sound and you can tune with it. And then there are countless other things that this switching system that can do that may become evident as I get through the presets. So what I'm going to do now is just jump into the presets and say it's 3 or 4 different songs where I'm really utilising the power of the ES8, combining it with the pedals to get a lot of really interesting sounds. Okay, so presets. Important to show this as it's how 100% I use this board, okay? So I've gone through to show you whatever every pedal is in an individual loop, and then I combine those pedals in various different ways. And I will add, I combine the 2 amplifiers and put certain effects into certain amplifiers to get a certain sound, right? So I'm going to go through 3 songs to show you kind of this system working at its most useful, okay? So the first song was a song called Lonely Lives, and it has a big reverb on the wet side and a quarter note analog delay on one side as well, and it sounds like this. That's the main riff, and then when I go into the chorus, I use the current number function on the ES8 and I hit the same preset, number 2, and it brings in the clone. No clone. And that's the first way that I think, and also you can see that I managed to, even though the delay is in stereo, right, and it's on both sides, you can maneuver the stereo split in the signal chain, which I'll show you with a picture now. So you can see here that the delay is the delay is only on one side, number 8 is only on one side after the stereo split, okay? If I wanted it to be on both sides, which it is on the next preset, which I'll show you, just move it before the stereo split and then both sides of the delay, which almost act like 2 individual pedals, go on the other, like if you put it before the stereo split, then delays on both sides. It's really simple. So the other thing that happens is the BPM on the preset is at 130 BPM, and that sends that BPM to the flashback X4, which means the delay is perfectly in time. So that's quarter notes at 130 BPM, right? So if I move on to the bridge section of this song, so what it does is I need a phaser and I need to change to a dual delay, one on each side. So what happens is it selects number 4 on the M5 here, which is a phaser, and it is in stereo on both sides, and then it also puts the delay to a tape delay, which is dotted eighths on one side and quarter notes on the other, and it sounds like this, the part. And that's how you can set up completely different sounds with just one switch, right? So, moving on to the next preset, we come on to the song called Home Away From Home. And on this, the verse starts with just the guitar and the big reverb for the verse riff. And then when the chorus part comes in, I simply hit the same switch, and it brings in the boost and it brings in the mosaic for the chorus sort of Tarantino style riff. It sounds like this. Right. So that's the verse and the chorus are both on one switch. So again, using the current number function and using the assign to turn certain things on and off when I hit that switch. So then I go to the riff of that song. Excuse me, I've got some strap problems going on here. And I hit the number 5, which is Home Away From Home heavy. And what happens is it brings in just the fuzz. So that's the first half of the riff in that song. And then what happens is I hit the switch again and it brings in the boost, but it brings it in before the fuzz. So that's it. And then I can just hit that one switch again back to the first patch, and it kills the fuzz, brings in the reverb, brings in the mosaic 12-string simulator for that part. So I can go straight from then for the end of the song, I just hit switch 6 here, and what it does is it brings in a dotted eighth digital delay with modulation on both sides again, but it's the same on both sides. Actually, I think it's on one side. It's only on one side, excuse me. And it brings in the boost again for the end section and the mosaic, which sounds like this. So again, a huge amount of different sounds on use with really simple switches there. So I'm going to do one more song now. So this song is called You, and again, it has a lot of different things going on. As I mentioned, it's a one guitar band, so I have to make the guitar do a lot of work. So this starts off with this rhythmic piece that goes like this. Turn my volume up would help. So now all I do is I hit the current number switch again, and it kills the delay and turns on a perfectly in time rhythmic tremolo, because I'm using the BPM again to control the speed of the tremolo, and it sounds like this. then in the next section of the song, it just goes to just the fuzz and a tape delay. And sounds and again, the delay is only on one side and it's just the fuzz and the delay. Then when it comes to the chorus part of the song, I hit switch 3 and it brings in a modulated digital delay and it brings in this full tone distortion part for the chorus part, which sounds, and it's actually on the lighter sound, it sounds like this. And then I can go straight back to the riff. With one switch. So as you can see, in terms of panning things to both sides, bringing in various different effects for different parts of songs to make them sound big or small or have various types of dramatic impact, timing everything correctly with the samples and the click track that we use, it's perfect. I just program in literally the pace of the song into the preset. And then for being able to split things between having a distortion over here and a delay over here, or a delay on both sides, or counter time delay on both sides, it can really do anything. It's really kind of the perfect setup for the way I like to record and play live. So there you have it. My 2022 pedal board using the ES8 as the brains behind the whole operation. I suppose my conclusion from this would be, for me, and I don't think this is for everybody, I think a lot of people love digital multi-effects units, but for me, I much prefer this sort of a setup using stomp boxes and a switcher and outboard amplifiers that I can tweak once and then those tweaks are made across every preset is a much better way of running things for me than using a multi-effects unit. Although I will say that's purely my take. I know the multi-effects thing is taken off in a big way and people really seem to love it. But that's my pedal board for 2022. If you have any questions about anything to do with it, about the ES8 for example, which I think is an amazing piece of kit, feel free to pop them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, I guess, and please like and subscribe, and I will see you in another video again soon. Cheers, bye bye.